Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The wait is over for more than 1,400 vendors. NASA's SEWP program office awarded spots on its 6th iteration of its government-wide technology contract. In all, NASA made more than 2,100 awards under this government-wide acquisition contract for IT products and services. For more on the SEWP VI awards, Federal News Network's executive editor, Jason Miller, joins me now. Jason, you've brought details on a fascinating topic. Thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, Terry.
All right, before we start, though, let's remind folks what the SEWP program provides to agencies and how SEWP VI is different from previous versions.
So SEWP has been around since the late 90s. It was one of the first government-wide acquisition contracts for technology. And specifically, when NASA launched this, it was very focused on scientific and engineering problems and a lot of IT hardware, early 90s. And early iterations of SEWP were very kind of NASA only. And then over time, it grew and grew and grew. And today, it's one of the most popular contracts across the entire government. It has a low fee. It's easy to use. And, Joanne Wojtek, the program director at SEWP, will tell you they're doing everything they can to kind of continue to iterate and evolve. And SEWP VI is another iteration of this government-wide acquisition contract. And what's different about SEWP VI than previous versions is they're actually going into the services arena. Previously, it was very much product focused with some services. This is very much products and services. And that's a big difference because in the past, a lot of the services type contracts for especially government-wide acquisition type contracts were really focused only at GSA and, of course, an NIH NITAC contract with CIOSP 3 and previously. So, if you will, NASA SEWP is going into an area that's different for them. The second big change is you said at the top more than 2,100 awards. Just for comparison, SEWP V, when it was awarded in May 2015, 197 awards. I don't do math, you know that, Terry, but that's a lot more for SEWP VI than SEWP V.
When you think about those 2,100 awards, Jason, how did they break down by category across the contract?
The way they released the RFP was 3 separate categories, and you could bid on more than one category for sure. So I'll go through them real quickly. Category A, as they called it. Now, this is more traditional SEWP, what you've seen with products, IT and communications, audiovisual services, products, cloud-based services, installation, integration, testing, training, maintenance, and like. They made 364 awards under Category A. Category B, this is what they called enterprise-wide strategic solutions to improve and enhance that same IT category capabilities and AV infrastructure. Again, does include some products and services, cloud computing, managed services such as for printer computer services, including agency-wide help desk ticketing systems. For Category B, they made 692 awards. I know you're doing math in your head, Terry. I can see it. And then for finally, Category C. Now, this is the big change. They made more than 1,000 awards, 1,059. And this is for what they called mission-based services, a full range of technology services, anything from computer programming services to telecom to network operations to data processing and analysis services, hosting, consulting services, digital government services, and, of course, cybersecurity and system security services. So in all, they made about 1,059 awards for Category C. Now, when you break that down even further and you go across all the different awards they made about 80% of those in Category A were small businesses and 88% in Category B were small businesses. And, of course, they break down through the socioeconomic categories as well. So as you can tell, the thing about NASA SEWP over the years was very supportive of small businesses, and they continue that just with a lot more awards, probably the biggest awards they've ever made for NASA.
Jason, one of the things we've been watching under the Trump administration is GSA's effort to centralize service contracts. How does that compare with Category C here?
There's been a lot of discussion about whether or not NASA SEWP will move to GSA or not. And about a year ago, there's a big hubbub. Everyone was like, yeah, it's going to move. And then it was like, well, maybe it won't move. Well, maybe it will move later. Maybe it won't move at all. We're still in that. We don't know whether it's going to move. But SEWP has for a long time been a best-in-class contract as categorized by the Office of Management and Budget. I think there will continue to be a best-in-class contract, so a preferred source. We're also waiting on some more information from the Office of Federal Procurement Policy about what does mandatory sources of supply look like these days and whether or not things like NASA SEWP, like the GSA schedules, like Alliant 3, so on and so forth, will become part of that. Hey, you must start here and then work down versus make your own contract. So I think this bodes well for having a big contract with lots of different areas to provide services and products for the agency. So I would assume NASA SEWP will continue down this path, and whether they move to GSA or not, we don't know yet.
Well, given that assumption, then, what's the timeline to get SEWP VI open for business?
What Joanne Wojtek told me was the goal is November 1st. We want to make this open for business. Now, at the same time, SEWP V, they're going to extend this through January of 2027. So right now, SEWP V is supposed to end in the end of September. They're going to extend it another several months. So there's going to be some overlap. And also, it's a way for agencies to get through the end of the fiscal year. So fiscal year 2026 and begin fiscal 2027. And meanwhile, they have time to ramp up SEWP VI, get the vendors ready, get the ordering ready. It's a much bigger lift for 2,100 awards, almost 1,500 contractors than the initial SEWP V, which was only about 140 contractors and 197 awards.
That sounds so rational, but I have to ask, are protests possible here?
I guess protests are always possible, so let's start there. But I think NASA is fairly confident that it has made through the gauntlet of protests. And the reason why is the way NASA set up the evaluations of bids, and they got several thousand bids. And it's been an ongoing program for, the solicitation has been ongoing for about 2 years or more, is they've gone through several iterations of protests through the Government Accountability Office already. And of the 16 protests they've gotten for SEWP VI, 6 have been denied, 9 have been dismissed, which means that they've made corrective action in some way or shape or form. And there's still one protest that is outstanding that should be decided no later than July 22nd. Could there be more protests? Possibly, but I would say that I think NASA is fairly confident that they have crossed their T's, dotted their I's, done everything they could, and for the most part, they believe that a lot of the protests were taken care of as each vendor had to go through Gate 1, Gate 2, Gate 3 to get to this final award phase.
So what will the vendors be watching for over the next couple of months?
NASA's still got to go through the final sets of award phases, right? Make sure that you said you're in NAICS code XYZ. Yes, you are in XYZ. You said you're a small business. Yes, you qualify for a small business. So that is all the pieces and parts that's going to lead up to this November 1st effort. Joanne Wojtek told me, she spent the last day and a half just looking at emails, making sure everyone's email was correct as they sent out these award notices. For having this many awards, there's a lot of work that has to get done to get to that November 1st date of launch. This has been a long process. Over 2 years, they've had 14 different amendments. They had protests and concerns, over 6,700 questions on the RFP. These things are never easy. So to get to this point where they're at today took a huge Herculean effort by the NASA program office. And to their credit, 16 awards in the overall scheme of things doesn't sound like a lot, considering when you look at something like CIOSP 4 that NITEC eventually had to cancel, they had hundreds of awards. And now I'm not comparing, they're not the same contract in any regards, but I think, to NASA's point, they've always ran a very tight program. And I think having a low number of awards for the thousands of bids that they got is a pretty good sign.
That's Federal News Network's executive editor, Jason Miller. Jason, thanks for the story.
Always a pleasure.
You can find all the details at federalnewsnetwork.com.